The Best of Adam Sharp, written by Graeme Simsion, narrated by David Barker, published by Text Publishing, 2016, directed by Chris Chappell at Risk Sound Studios, Melbourne, Australia. The dedication reads, "This book is, again, for my wife, Anne, my inspiration, collaborator, and first reader. It is also a nod to the music and musicians that contributed so much to the life of my generation. If you don't know the songs in this book, I encourage you to download and listen to them. Visit textpublishing.com.au/books/The Best of Adam Sharp, separated by hyphens, for a Spotify playlist." Before the Deluge. If my life prior to February 15th, 2012 had been a song, it might have been Hey Jude, a simple piano tune taking my sad and sorry adolescence and making it better. In the middle, it would pick up, better and better, for a few moments foreshadowing something extraordinary. And then just na-na-na-na, over and over. Pleasant enough, but mainly because it evoked what had gone before. A day that began in my childhood bedroom in Manchester, boxed in by photograph albums and records, was always going to evoke the past. My walk to the station, through streets grey with drizzle, and commuters huddled into their coats and plugged into their phones, did not so much remind me of days gone by as stir a longing for them, for a summer under blue skies half a world away, where the music of boomboxes competed with the laughter of carelessly dressed drinkers spilling from the pub onto the footpath. My route took me past the Radisson Hotel, once the Free Trade Hall, and scene of a seminal moment in popular music. 17th of May, 1966. A heckler shouts, "Judas!" to the young Bob Dylan, who's returned after the interval with an electric guitar, and he responds with a blistering rendition of Like a Rolling Stone. My father was there in the audience, eyewitness to music history. And on the station concourse, a teenage girl in a light blue anorak and a beanie like mine was singing Adele's Someone Like You, a song about glory days, regrets, and the passing of time. It might have been just a pretty tune had there not been the memory of another woman, 22 years ago now, to give substance to the observation that love only sometimes lasts. I leaned against the wall opposite the busker. Passengers passed between us, a few of them tossing coins into her keyboard case. She was singing without a microphone, leaving it to the acoustics of the enclosed space to do the work. Her playing was basic, but she had a good voice and a feeling for the song. I allowed it to wash over me, letting music and performance take the simple sentiments to a higher plane, indulging for a few minutes in the sweet sadness of nostalgia, so different from the everyday gloom I'd woken to in my mother's house. I tossed in a £2 coin and earned a smile. There was a time when I might have done more. Put a tenner in to get her attention, offered to accompany her so she could stand up to sing, made a little personal history. That time was gone. These days I was taking more from my bank of memories than I was putting in. The day might come when I had nothing but memories, and the choice of whether to indulge my romantic side and wallow in them, or my cynical side and reflect on their reliability. Had I painted the Australian skies a deeper blue because they were the backdrop to my great lost love? Did they really jeer Dylan at the Free Trade Hall? A month ago, I'd pulled the bootleg from my dad's vinyl collection, and my mother had thrown her own handful of mud into time's ever-rolling stream. "Your father had a ticket to that concert, but he didn't go. He had his own job to do and a family to look after." I would have backed the original version. My mother was constantly recasting my wayward dad as a responsible breadwinner and role model, more so lately since I did not have a proper job, which was why I was able to travel halfway across England in the middle of the week to take her to medical appointments. No matter now. I would soon have more immediate matters to occupy my mind. Later that day, as I continued my engagement with the past, scouring the internet for music trivia in the hope of a moment of appreciation at the pub quiz, a cosmic DJ, perhaps the ghost of my father, would lift the needle on the na-na-na-nas of Hey Jude, say, "Nothing new happening here," and turn it to the flip side. Revolution. Part 1. Chapter 1. I was back home in Norwich, reading up on Pete Best, the Beatles' forgotten first drummer, when the email popped up in the bottom corner of my screen. From Angelina.Brown@tpg.com.au. Hi. That was it. Hi. After 22 years, 20 without any contact at all, out of the blue, Angelina Brown, my great lost love, decides to change the world and writes, "Hi." There was a song to mark the moment, My Sentimental Friend, a hit for Herman's Hermits in 1969, was, thanks to the physics of headphones, playing in the middle of my skull. It would now have a place in the jukebox musical of my life, with the line about the girl he once knew who left him broken in two. Not quite Wordsworth, but sufficiently resonant that when the message arrived, I was thinking about its sender. Was this the first time she'd thought about me? Letting her mind drift to a time when Like a Prayer was top of the charts, wondering what happened to that guy she met in a Melbourne bar and fell in love with? Just a browse of her contacts list and a casual, wonder what he's doing now. Click on Adam Sharp, type 2 letters, send. There had to be more to it. For a start, I would not have been in her contacts list. We had not been in touch since email was invented. The address suggested that she was still in Australia. I checked the World Clock website. 1:15 p.m. in Norwich was a quarter after midnight in Melbourne. Was she drunk? Had she left Charlie? Had he left her? Maybe they'd split up 15 years ago. She was still using her maiden name. No surprise there. She hadn't changed it the first time around. I knew barely anything about Charlie, not even his surname. In my mind, it was the same as hers. Charlie Brown, the little bald cartoon character in his baseball mitt. "It's a high-fly ball, Charlie Brown. Don't miss it, Charlie Brown." In real life, I was the one who'd missed it. One night, after a few pints, I'd Googled her. I got nowhere. Angelina shared a name with an equal opportunity commissioner and a newspaper columnist, and finding her among the litigation and opinions had been too much for my beer-addled brain. Unless I searched images, I stopped myself. Angelina had been, an addiction, and the only way to deal with an addiction is abstinence. Maybe. Time passes. Every alcoholic wants to prove they're cured. Surely after 20 years in a committed relationship, I could exchange an email or two with my ex-lover who had, as the Americans say, reached out. She might have a terminal illness and want to tie up the loose ends. I could blame the breakfast conversation with my mother for that thought. Perhaps she and Charlie just wanted advice on holiday options in northern England. Looking for somewhere cold and miserable to get away from this interminable sunshine. What would it say about my relationship with Claire if I felt too vulnerable to respond to an innocuous query? I let Angelina's email sit until the evening. I was still weighing my options when Claire arrived home. Our conversation was shouted between my room and the bottom of the stairs, but I could picture her in her important meeting grey suit with the green scarf and the chunky-heeled boots that brought her up to a neat 5'4". "Sorry, meeting went a bit over. Dinner smells good. Jamie Oliver, chicken casserole. I've had mine. Do you want a glass of wine? Bottle open in the fridge. How's your mum? Haven't got the results yet. I think she's a bit scared. Did you give her my love? Forgot. Adam, better not have. Have you fed Elvis? You'd know if I hadn't. That was a fair snapshot of the relationship that Angelina's email might test. We were a functioning household. We didn't fight. We enjoyed meals together on the weekends. We looked out for each other. Good friends. Nobody writes songs about those things, but there is a lot to be said for them. We had done better than my pub quiz teammate Sheila and her husband Chad, who cared for everyone except each other, or our friends Randall and Mandy, whose battle for custody of their IVF twins had left casualties from San Jose to Liverpool, or my parents, for that matter. But the last few years had seen a fading of what was left of the romance. 2 months earlier, I'd purchased a single bed for my study, ostensibly because of my snoring, and Claire needing her sleep because she had a lot going on with the prospective sale of her software company. Our sex life had followed me out of the bedroom, and I didn't miss it as much as I thought I would. I wasn't sure if that was a good or bad thing. Our situation was probably not so different from that of many couples our age. It would be a stretch to blame any shortcomings on a relationship that had ended 22 years earlier. I didn't think about Angelina when I was deep in a database tuning problem, or trying to recall the name of the Bonzo Dog Doodah band's lead singer, or giving Claire a kiss on the forehead as she left for work. It was only when I was listening to music, or on the rare occasion I played a song on the piano. For those few minutes or hours, I would be back in 1989. I was playing in a bar, not a pub, a bar, in Melbourne, up a staircase off Victoria Parade in the inner-city suburb of Fitzroy. It was one of the few places that stayed open late, drawing a mix of yuppies and baby boomers. In those days, a baby boomer was a person born shortly after the war, not someone like me who came along almost 20 years later. Most nights, the boomers outnumbered the yuppies, and my 60s and 70s repertoire got a good workout. There was a steady trickle of customers early in the evening, but it only got busy with the after-dinner crowd and the stragglers from the pubs shaking out their umbrellas, piling their winter coats and woolen hats on the stand and ordering an ice-cold lager. It was early July, midwinter, and Australia had yet to deliver on its promise of sunshine. The place would not have won any prizes for interior decoration. There was a bar that seated 8 or 10 on stools, a dozen small tables, a couple of leather sofas, and old movie posters on the walls. No meals, just bar snacks. But once a crowd built up, with more patrons standing than sitting, the noise and smoke provided enough atmosphere to compensate. I had been in Australia 3 weeks. A local insurance company was implementing a new generation database, and I had landed a 15-month consulting assignment that would give me a tour of its branches around the world. I was 26, barely 5 years out of a computer science degree, riding a wave of technology that the old-timers in their 30s had failed to catch. Computing was my passport out of the lower middle class, comprehensive school origins, after I'd abandoned the more obvious option of becoming a rock star. In my first week in Melbourne, I tagged along to the bar with a few workmates to celebrate one of them becoming a father, and ended up playing a couple of songs on the piano. I remember doing Walk Away Renee in homage to the new arrival who'd been given that name. The barman, a knockabout bloke named Shanksy, gave me a half pint, a pot, of lager. I thanked him for letting me use the piano, and he said, "Any time, mate." I took up his offer, and the bar became my social life. Shanksy looked after my drinks, and I put a tip jar on the piano. I did all right with it, but money was not the motivation. My day job paid well and included an accommodation allowance, which covered a warehouse apartment above a vegetarian restaurant in Brunswick Street, a 15-minute tram ride from work and a 10-minute stagger from the bar. I got to know the piano well. It was a locally made Beal, old but with a nice sound, and there was even a microphone and a small amplifier. I would drop in on the way to work, or after my morning jog and entertain the cleaners with my scales. In the evenings, it made all the difference. Without it, I would have been a loner paying for my own drinks, with no reason to talk to anyone, and no reason for anyone to talk to me, and too much time to think about the hole in my life. I didn't see her walk in. I saw her when she came over to the piano. In a town that dressed in black, she was wearing a white woolen dress and high boots. Mid-20s, shoulder-length dark brown hair against light skin, maybe 5'7" with the heels. She had a pink cocktail in her hand. We were in what was technically a cocktail bar, but this was Australia, and most people drank beer, wine, and simple mixed drinks unless they got into downing shots, B-52s and flaming Lamborghinis. The collection of liqueurs behind the bar was more for show, and Shanksy's cocktail repertoire was limited. But tonight, he'd produced a pink one, with a cherry and an umbrella. I was playing Van Morrison's Brown-Eyed Girl, and she stood to one side of the piano, close enough to let me know she was there, sipping her cocktail. When I'd finished, she clapped, walked up and asked, "Do you know Because the Night?" I had a chance to look at her more closely and was struck by her eyes, big and brown, and under the right one a streak of mascara tracking halfway down her cheek. I don't usually notice perfume unless it's just been applied. Perhaps hers had been, because it was strong and distinct. For the record, it was Obsession by Calvin Klein. Ever since, I've been able to detect it at 20 paces. A woman steps onto the bus, and I pick it up, along with all the memories attached to it. Proust's Madeleines. "It's by Patti Smith," she said, while I was wondering if I should say something about her mascara. "And Bruce Springsteen." "Say that again," she said, and laughed. "Bruce Springsteen. They wrote it together. Springsteen never did a studio recording, but it's on his live album." "Rooted together, eh? Lovely." Her impression of my accent would have placed me closer to Glasgow than Manchester, but it was accompanied by a light-up-the-room smile. I gave her a look of mock offence. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to be rude. I just love your accent." I decided to take the risk of being rude myself and drew my finger down my left cheek. We had an exchange of touching our faces, nodding and laughing as she got the message, wet her finger, rubbed the wrong cheek, then managed to turn the streak into a smear on the right one. "Hold on," I said, and walked to the bar where there was a pile of paper napkins. On the way back, I realized that the place had gone quiet, and not just because the piano player had taken a break. Everyone, from Shanksy behind the bar to the couple standing in the doorway still wearing their coats, was watching me. Watching us. I had no desire to play out in public what I'd begun to imagine as a tender moment, nor to draw attention to the fact that she might have been crying. I blew my nose on the napkin, stuffed it into my pocket, and sat back at the piano. "So, because the night, was it?" She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, then looked around the room. "It's okay," I said. "You got most of it." "Would you mind if I sang?" In general, the answer to "Can I sing with the band?" is a polite no, a response based on experience and the advice of my dad. He used to have, he said, a firm rule that nobody, but nobody, got to sing or play with whatever band he was in. "If Eric Clapton comes in and wants to play, I'll tell him he can bugger off." Because if the owner decides he likes Clapton better than us, then he's got our gig and we don't eat. He delivered his lesson in job security so many times that despite the improbability of Mr. Clapton deciding to settle for the audience and financial rewards of the King's Head in Manchester, it became family history as an actual event. "You know," my mother would say, "your dad once told Eric Clapton to bugger off, excuse the French, but that's what he said, so he could get on with earning a living. There's a lesson there." My dad may or may not have said bugger off to God, but I would be prepared to bet that his response to the young woman with the big brown eyes would have been the same as mine, even without the pressure of a bar full of people waiting for something to happen. What key? She was not bad, and the crowd loved her. I mean, they loved her. She was in tune and giving it all she had. But it was a sexy song, and she was more Olivia Newton-John than Debbie Harry, or Patti Smith for that matter. Who was I to judge? She got a standing ovation and calls for more. After one 5-minute performance, she owned the place, and I was part of it. I had no idea what was going on. Would you like to do something else? I asked. Daydream believer? She laughed. That's your accent, isn't it, Davy Jones? She had a good ear, and a commendable familiarity with popular music from before her time. What number is this, Jim? I said, mimicking Davy Jones. That smile again. 7A. A very commendable familiarity. Do you know Both Sides Now? She said. Never heard of it. I played the intro. This was not going to be as stimulating as having her standing 3 feet away hoarsely asking someone to touch her now, but the Joni Mitchell song was probably closer to what her singing teacher would have recommended, and she did it nicely. She had looked at clouds and love, and had begun looking at life when a short, sharp guy in a blue pinstriped suit with red braces and gelled hair came up on her other side and stood there, radiating impatience. He was about 35 and studiedly good-looking in a Michael Douglas sort of way, Gordon Gekko in Wall Street. I did an extra reprise of the final chorus, which he responded to with a glare and pursed lips in case his folded arms were not sending the message. As soon as she had sung the last line, he dropped a coin in the tip jar. I wound up the song and thought that would be the end of it. Gordon Gekko began to walk away, but my singer stayed where she was, right beside me. Do you know Angel of the Morning? She said. I hit an A chord and raised my eyebrows to see that she was happy with the key, which I guessed would test her upper range. She responded by singing the first line a cappella. I automatically brought my heel down to begin counting the beat. If you tap your toe, the rhythm stays in your foot. Tap your heel, and you feel it through your body. I felt more than that. She put her hand on my shoulder and pressed gently in time with me. It was an extraordinarily intimate gesture, given that we were not just in front of, but surrounded by, an audience. I don't care if anyone's watching. Let's do this, just you and me, and thank you for being here and on my side. The loud cough and dirty look from her minder said, play another chord and I'll break your arms. I played an E. I was in a bar in Melbourne, not the south side of Chicago, and the pretty guy in a suit was no Leroy Brown. He looked at me. My singer looked at me. They looked at each other. Then they walked towards the door. She still had a faint black mark on her cheek. I should have just let them go. They were customers and had done nothing to provoke me beyond the insulting tip. It was, in part, a reaction to him pushing her around, and to her acquiescing only a few minutes after having the courage to take on a challenging song in front of a bar crowd. It had also been a bad day at work. I'd been dubbed Seagull after a joke that consultants fly in, do a lot of flapping and squawking, shit all over everybody and fly out. I'd probably earned it, trying too hard to make an impression that justified being paid 3 times what the permanent employees were getting. I was technically up to the task, but still green at the consulting game. And there was the tip. Gordon Gekko had no way of knowing about my well-paid day job. I may have been channeling my late father when I gave him a Lennon-McCartney send-off. You're going to lose that girl. They both turned around. It was too dark to read their expressions. I had to finish the song, to maintain the pretense that the choice was coincidental. It took me further than I'd intended. They were both stopped in the doorway, listening as I sang about making a point of taking her away from him. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. In the end, it was me who lost the girl. "Hi," said the computer screen. "Meow," said Elvis, rubbing against my leg. "Mum," said my phone, switched to silent. "One thing at a time." "I've got the results," said my mother. "I'm afraid it's bad news." I knew her better than to respond with anything more than a neutral, "It's late in the day to be getting results." It was after 10 p.m. "I've had them for 4 hours. I didn't want to spoil your dinner." "Oh?" "They couldn't find anything, so we still don't know what it is." An outpouring of relief that my mother did not have cancer would only have prompted a homily on misplaced optimism, likely illustrated with a story from my childhood that I'd chosen to forget. Hi was still looking at me. A link to my past and a chance for a reality check. Nothing more than that. She was 10,000 miles away. One little drink couldn't hurt. I filled the cat's water bowl and walked back to the computer. Claire had gone to bed. Reply to sender. Hi. As my finger hovered over the mouse, I saw her again standing by the piano, tear tracked down her cheek, trying to hide her nerves, enlisting me as her ally. "I just love your accent." Backspace. "Hey up, lass," I typed. Send. Chapter 2. As I was emptying the tip jar, having played through to closing time, Shanksy walked by with his bucket and mop. "You know who that was, don't you?" he said. "Who do you mean?" I was kidding, of course. It had been a quiet night for young women with beautiful brown eyes walking into the bar and singing "Take Me Now." Sergeant Carey from Mornington Police, Angelina Brown. My singer did not look like a cop. Why would I recognize a police officer from out of town anyway? And was it Carey or Brown? Shanksy cleared up the confusion, which was due to my recent arrival in the country that had given the world neighbours and home and away. Carey was in fact Kerry. Only on television are police sergeants referred to by their first names. Ms. Brown was an actress, which explained the special reception. "Who was the boyfriend?" I asked. "No idea. I've never seen her in here before. Not a bad set." "Thanks," I said. "You like the Beatles song?" He laughed. "You're going to lose that girl." "Sailing close to the wind, mate. Lucky everyone else was thinking the same thing." Except everyone else knew who she was, and that she was out of my league. I must have been the only person in the bar who had felt it might be the beginning of something. There is a particular magic when people play and sing together, and it had been there at the piano, along with the tease about my accent and the moment with the mascara. But my ungracious parting shot would have blown any chance I might have had. Perhaps there was an element of self-sabotage. My move to Australia had been prompted by more than the promise of money and sunshine. There had been a relationship, my first serious relationship, back in the UK. After 18 months together, 9 of them sharing a flat and a cat, Joanna wanted to have children, and I was not ready. Trouble was, I wasn't sure I would ever be ready. I couldn't put a date on it. It had ended with me catching a plane to the other side of the world. Now I wanted to work myself out before I let anyone else down. Even if I had been looking for a new partner, I would not have chosen a well-known actress who should have been free to sing a couple of songs without being stalked by the pianist. In any case, she apparently had a boyfriend. For all those reasons, I didn't do anything about it. Angelina did. A fortnight later, she walked into the bar, alone. It was 6 p.m. and the place was empty. Normally, I would not have been there so early, but I had asked one of the admin staff from work out for dinner, my first date in Australia. Angelina was indirectly responsible. She had awoken something, even if it was just my mother's mantra of getting on with it. The obvious way to begin my date with Tina was with some special attention at my bar. We had come straight from the office, so I was in a suit and tie, with my hair cut and beard trimmed for the occasion. The absence of other customers detracted a little from the effect I was aiming for, but we took a table near the bar and had just ordered drinks when Angelina walked in. She was showing none of the self-confidence that had fueled Because the Night, rather the uncertainty that had undermined its credibility. She looked younger than I remembered her. She caught my eye, saw Tina, and turned to leave. Then, one table away from the door, she sat down. It took a few moments before I allowed myself to believe that she might have come to see me, and a few more to realize that this was exactly what her actions had signaled, right down to deciding that she didn't want to confirm my suspicions by walking out. When Shanksy walked over to take her order, Tina said, "Isn't that Angelina Brown?" Normally I would have responded by showing off my recently acquired knowledge. "From Mornington Police. She plays Sergeant Kerry, doesn't she?" Instead I said, "Who?" "She's an actress in a soapy. I watched it once or twice, just to see what it was about. She plays the smart one, not the hot one, but seeing her here in person, she's quite attractive. You think so?" I took the opportunity to look at her again. "She's okay," I said. I thought she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She's always solving the crime or cancelling people, and she seems really together, but she's actually having an affair with a pathologist. She's not married, but he is, and he's a slimeball, and everyone wants her to get a grip and go with a detective sergeant who really likes her, but who's too shy to say anything. Anyway, like I said, I don't really watch it. At least Tina was giving me time to think. Why had Angelina left it so long? What about the boyfriend? How was I going to connect with her before she walked out of my life again? I could hardly ask Tina to make herself scarce so I could pursue another woman. Even putting aside basic decency, it would have been career suicide to insult the woman who ran the office football tipping competition and was thus connected with everyone in the department. I could have claimed to have met Angelina before, friend of a friend, or, God forbid, told the simple truth that she'd sung at the piano one night. But I had effectively stated that I did not know her. There was no practical way I could give Shanksy a message to deliver in front of Tina. Behind the bar, he poured Angelina an orange juice. She was not going to stick around. Somehow, I had to get a message to her. And in that thought lay the answer. It was a clunky answer, but it would have to do. I intercepted Shanksy on his way to Angelina's table. "Tina, this is Shanksy. Tell her what I do here." "He's the piano player, when he feels like it." "No way," said Tina. I signalled to Shanksy to refill her glass and walk to the piano, now having an excuse to play to the empty house. I was struggling to think of the words to the Bee Gees, "I've got to get a message to you." The preacher tortured me. I was at the piano about to regale a beautiful woman with a fudged impression of the Brothers Gibb when inspiration of sorts arrived. "You are so beautiful." It was more of a 1 a.m. last drink stagger off into the night closer, but the sentiment was on the mark. I was underway before I had time to consider the rest of the song. It was not a total screw-up like singing "Go Away, Little Girl," but the lyrics needed Joe Cocker's voice to offset the schmaltziness. I did my best. I tried to keep looking towards Tina rather than Angelina, singing about a woman being everything I'd hoped for, the joy and happiness she brought me, a gift from heaven, And then I realised that Angelina might think I was singing it for my date. So, as I growled the last drawn out, to me, feeling a complete idiot, I turned to Angelina and gave her what I hoped was a meaningful look. She was laughing. I went back to my table and could tell something was wrong. Surely one look had not given me away. I'd focused on Tina for most of the song. That turned out to be the problem, and the solution. "Adam, that was lovely," she said, "but wow, just a bit heavy. I mean, we don't really know each other yet. I'm just getting over a relationship, and I'm more about, having a good time." Being taken to an empty bar and serenaded with a full-on love song at 6 p.m. was probably an unnerving start to a first date with the new guy in the office. "Hey," I said, "me too." "I wish that was true," said Tina. "But it's obvious you're looking for something more. Would you be really upset if we just called it a night now? I can get the tram and then it's like nothing happened." I began to stand, but Tina stopped me. "It's okay, we can finish our drinks. You seem like a really sensitive person. It just wasn't what I was expecting. After the way you are at work. No offence." While Tina finished her drink, Angelina walked to the bar, settled her account, and disappeared down the stairs. Shanksy waited until I'd paid. Playing one song for your girlfriend doesn't get you 2 free drinks, and allowed me to get halfway to the door before calling me back. "Almost forgot. Your girlfriend left you this." He gave me an envelope with "English piano player" written on the front. In another pen, Angelina had added, "and friend." She had probably just been planning to drop it in, not expecting I would be there so early in the evening. It was a photocopied invitation to a farewell party for Jenny and Bryce, strangers to me. They were off to England, probably to live in Earl's Court, work in a bar and save up for a hitchhiking trip around Europe. Or, more likely, to get some up-to-date experience in database design so there would be no need for overpaid imports like me. The party was accordingly themed "Bring a Brit." It was hardly insulting, even a little more respectful and euphonious than "Bring a Pom" that my workmates would no doubt have written. But I had allowed my imagination to run to something more personal. Chapter 3. The following Friday, I fetched up just after 10 p.m. at a double-storey house in the eastern suburbs. It was a big party, maybe 70 guests, mostly in jeans, although more stylishly dressed than I would have expected of 20-somethings. Actors and crew, perhaps, cooler than the IT crowd. Angelina was standing in the living room with a group of women of about her own age. She was wearing a bright burgundy jacket with a short skirt, a beret, and quite a bit of makeup, striking but distinctly different from her look in the bar when she delivered the invitation, which in turn was different from that first night singing. The perfume was the same. She opened a gap for me, touched me on the arm, and smiled a silent welcome. I took the opportunity to check her left hand. No ring. They were deep into a conversation about tactics for defending a drink-driving charge, and Angelina managed to convey without words that she was pleased that I had come, and if I could put up with her friend's rudeness in not pausing to let her introduce me, she would do so in due course. Although she might like to contribute to the discussion first, and in the meantime, don't go away. I smiled. I wasn't going anywhere. The conversation was light-hearted, but it was apparent that the young woman on the verge of losing her driver's license was struggling to appreciate the more outrageous suggestions, most of which were coming from a Jane Mansfield look-alike with an irritatingly childish voice. Angelina offered the first serious suggestion. "How long does your probationary license have left to run?" "Why?" "Because they go by the date of the court case, not the date you got booked." "Are you sure?" Pretty sure. If you're on a full licence on the day you go to court, you'll only get a suspension, if you're nice to the magistrate. Nice to the magistrate set Jane Mansfield off again, and left me to conclude that Angelina must have some experience with the law, in the negative sense, the wild, law-breaking actress. She had still not managed to introduce me when a familiar figure materialised. He was wearing black slacks, a black roll-neck sweater and polished shoes. He looked older than most of the other guests. He gave me a quick appraisal, raised his eyebrows, but did not acknowledge me directly. "Richard," said Jane Mansfield to the man formerly known as Gordon Gecko, "Miranda got booked at .08. There's some way she can get off, right?" "Pass. I'll leave my work at the office," he smirked. "Like Angelina. She only does sex at work." Okay. It seemed they were a couple. He was apparently a lawyer, and unquestionably a first-class arsehole. Jane Mansfield responded with a giggle that went on longer than it needed to. I looked directly at Richard, and his expression made it clear that his joke was meant to contain a barb. Angelina stood there taking it. I was familiar with the dynamic, and not just from the night she'd sung at the bar. My father had a coruscating wit that would have left Richard in the shade. As a child, I'd spent too much time listening to him use it on my mother. Richard gave the lie to his statement about leaving work at the office by launching into an anecdote about a judge's daughter who had been charged with soliciting. I squeezed Angelina's arm, I hoped, discreetly, and walked into the dining room. A few moments later she followed. "What was that about?" I said. "She didn't mean any harm. She's just a bit of a ditz. I didn't mean her." "Too much to drink. Don't worry about it. Not your problem." I waited and she added, "We broke up a week ago. It's still a bit raw for both of us." "Can I get you a drink?" I said. "I'd love one, thank you. You're being very sweet." On my way to the kitchen, I realised that she didn't know my name, which was probably why she hadn't introduced me. By the time I found vodka, orange juice and ice, she'd wandered off. I eventually spotted her at the top of the stairs. There was a handwritten sign at the base, "No guests upstairs, please." I took her drink up. "I didn't feel like any more conversation," she said. "With anyone else, I mean." "Hard to have a conversation without anyone else," I said, and she smiled at the lame joke. "Hi, madam." "That's a shame. I'd hoped you'd have an sound in your name, to go with your accent. Like Gus, or Duncan, or Douglas." "Douglas." She laughed. It was an attractive laugh, a little tipsy but not drunken, and I liked being the cause of it. "Sorry, you're not offended, are you?" "You can call me any name you want, even a Scottish one." "All right, Douglas," she said. "What did you do with your girlfriend?" I told her the Tina story, at length, throwing in a few Mancunianisms to go with the accent, and she laughed through it. I was enjoying myself, too. "It was a nice choice of song," she said. "I don't get called beautiful too often, and it's what everyone's looking for in my world. You have to trust the spontaneous song test. It's like word association. Never lies." "Come on," she said. "That night I sang with you, I saw myself in the mirror afterwards. Mascara everywhere. I looked like Alice Cooper. You realise I'll never look at Alice Cooper again without thinking of you. I may decide he's the sexiest man on the planet." The music from downstairs had stopped for a few minutes, but it came back with a roar. Joe Cocker singing, "You Can Leave Your Hat On." Angelina smiled and touched my arm, starting a non-verbal conversation which seemed to go, "I'd like you to kiss me." "You're not really saying that, are you?" "I'm really saying that. That's why I haven't let go of your arm." "No, you can't be. Not to me. Not to Adam Sharp, the database guy from Manchester." "I'm standing here with my face turned up towards yours, and it's going to be awkward for both of us if you don't kiss me." I had not kissed anyone for a while. I closed my eyes and fell into it. The softness, the openness, the unreality of who she was. I didn't want to stop, but we were out in the open, visible to anyone who chose to look up from the base of the stairs. We pulled each other down the hallway, and there was a bedroom. The master bedroom, by the look of it, with family photos and an ensuite bathroom. No lock on the inside of the door, so after I closed it, I leaned against it while I kissed her again. After a few seconds, she broke the kiss, turned us around so she had her back against the door and said, "See, I don't only do sex at work." It could have been a sultry come on, but her tone was more defensive than seductive. For a moment I wondered if she was referring to what we had done already, if she had made her point, but then she pulled me into her again. There was not a lot of foreplay, and that was her fault as much as mine. It was straight to hitched up, unzipped and pushed aside clothes, with Angelina sandwiched between me and the door. I was no longer feeling overwhelmed. We were two people making love, and the rest didn't matter. Then, out of the blue, she let go a series of gasps that morphed from ecstasy to apparent surprise that it had happened so quickly. But before either Joe Cocker or I could finish, Angelina disentangled herself, picked up her handbag and made a dash for the bathroom. She was still wearing her beret. She was gone a good 10 minutes, time I used to mentally kick myself for taking it too fast. My fears were confirmed when she emerged. She went straight to the door with an expression that said, "What have I done?" I picked up our glasses and followed her downstairs, took a detour at the bathroom to clean up the lipstick that had found its way onto my face, and then could not find her. Richard was still in the living room. He peeled off from a conversation with Jane Mansfield as I walked past. If he had had too much to drink before, he was now comprehensively leathered. "Sorry, my friend. Gone. Gone home without you. I have some advice for you. Choom." I thought he was about to warn me off, threaten me. Jane Mansfield looked excited at the prospect. Richard managed to string another sentence together. "In the words of the immortal bard, all that glisters is not gold." There were plenty of comebacks to that, but there was no point getting drawn in. The hostess confirmed that Angelina had left and let me use the phone to call a taxi, but not before she had commented on my Union Jack sweatshirt. Nice to see a man who's proud of his heritage. Just a nod to the theme of the party. What theme? Chapter 4. That could have been the end of it. Not exactly something to tell your grandchildren, but a memory to bring a smile whenever I heard "You can leave your hat on," or "Because the night," or "Both sides now," or "You are so beautiful." Everything suggested a one-off, and I suppose a reasonable person might have concluded that this was not the first time a woman on the rebound would pick up a random guy for a quick encounter and toss him aside afterwards. It didn't sit. My head told me that she would not have gone to the trouble of inventing and delivering an invitation to satisfy a passing fancy. My gut told me that there was something more between us. And in the bedroom, I had no sense that she was using me. I replayed her hurried exit and saw embarrassment rather than disconnection. That said, I was still Adam Sharp, and she was Angelina Brown. When I was at school, there was the usual drama of dates for the end-of-year dance. Those of us without girlfriends were in the awkward position of having to ask someone out. And the girls were in the more awkward position of saying, "No, I'd like to wait for a better option, but if things get desperate..." There was a girl named Sarah. I liked her a lot, but she was drop-dead gorgeous, unfortunately for me, because I had convinced myself that, alone among my classmates who fancied her, I appreciated her finer qualities. Her looks put her out of my reach. It was only a couple of days before the dance, when I'd organised to go with another girl, that Sarah asked if I would partner her. She'd been waiting for me to ask. Everyone had thought she was out of their reach. That was a time I would have liked my dad, not the dad of my early teens, who was never home, but the version of him who taught me to play piano when I was a child, to have been around to give me some words of wisdom. Perhaps, 8 years on, fate was offering me a second chance. It took 3 phone calls to locate Angelina's agent. Australian posh female voice. A personal message. If you have a fan letter, you may send it care of our office. And you might want to make certain that you have the right person. Miss Brown plays the sergeant, not Constable Danny. I'm not a fan. I work in a bar. She left something here the other night. I can take care of that. What did she leave? A record, Because the Night, by Patti Smith. I doubt she'll be too concerned about a record. I'm sure you can keep it. It's signed to Angelina from Patti. That's how we worked out who it belonged to. Genius. Very well. I'll come and collect it myself. No point backing down now. Lovely. We'll keep it behind the bar. I gave her the details and briefed Shanksy to tell her that the record had disappeared if she turned up. The agent didn't turn up, nor was there any contact from Angelina. In the absence of a life beyond work and the bar, I spent a bit of time contemplating what to do next. In the middle of the night, some of my ideas seemed inspired, but in the light of day they all risked making me look like a stalker. Angelina had given no indication that she wanted to see me again. She knew where the bar was. Looking for a solution only increased my desire to see her again. She had been interested enough to invite me to the party, and then upstairs. There was chemistry. I had felt it at the piano and again at the party, not to mention in the bedroom. And while Richard might have had the edge on me in looks and profession, he seemed intent on poisoning the well rather than recovering the relationship. I couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous had happened and that she had felt it too. Maybe, just maybe, if I played it right, I had a chance. The bar had a television that was only used occasionally. Shanksy was prepared to turn it on in the early evening when the bar was quiet, and for the next 3 Mondays we watched the weekly episode of Mornington Police. Richard's jibe about Angelina doing sex at work had some basis in reality. Her character, Sergeant Kerry, was the smart and stable one at the station, but, as foreshadowed by Tina, she was pursuing a relationship with the district pathologist, a married man. It was family viewing, and there was nothing too explicit. Nevertheless, I hoped the actor who played Dr. Andrews did not go on to international success, as I'd taken a deep dislike to him. The surprise was Danny, the hot one, who was tasked with patrolling the beach in plain clothes, a brief that the costume department had interpreted liberally. She was played by the woman I'd dubbed Jane Mansfield, and was about as interesting on screen as in real life. I made a note of the production company and decided to try one more time. My approach had to be confident but not arrogant, admiring but not sycophantic, about her but also about me. Dramatic, perhaps, given her profession. Creative, to match her bring-a-Brit invention. And intelligent. It was going to take a fair bit of intelligence to meet all the other requirements. The florist sold me a dozen roses, 7 white and 5 red, and I arranged them in the form of a piano octave on a length of cardboard, the red roses doing duty as the black keys. We punched holes and fastened the flowers in place with wire ties. Over the florist's protests, I flattened 3 of the rose heads with the side of my fist to make an A chord, the triad I'd played to introduce Angel of the Morning, the song her boyfriend had not let her sing. A for Angelina. And Adam. Could I pack any more meaning into crushed roses? I could. I squashed the white G rose to make the chord a natural seventh, a lead in tension, anticipation. The florist agreed that a card would be overkill. I had never done anything like this before. A bunch of roses on Valentine's Day was my previous benchmark. It was probably a good thing I had not confided in anyone but the florist, who had a vested interest, or I would probably have let myself be talked out of it. I was in the bar until closing that night, and the night after that, living on nuts and cheese twists while I twisted myself into a knot, turning around after every song to scan the bar, running through scenarios of what I might say. On the third night, I finished by playing the Tom Waits song generally known as Closing Time, correct title, I Hope That I Don't Fall in Love With You, to an almost empty room. And when I looked up, there she was, in the half-dark, sitting alone with a green cocktail, dressed in jeans and a loose sweater. The song was apposite, if too late. It would be some time before I acknowledged that I was in love with Angelina, but the feelings were all there at that moment. I went to the bar, more to compose myself than anything else. "What's she drinking?" I asked Shanksy. "It's called a Fallen Angel. Gin, lemon, creme de menthe. Smells like mouthwash. Better make me a 9-inch pianist." He just looked at me. "It's a joke. A genie offers a guy one wish." "I know the joke." He pulled me a beer. "Be nice. She's as nervous as you are." Nervous or not, the piano man is as much a student of human behaviour as his co-workers behind the bar. I reminded myself that the biggest hurdle had been getting Angelina to turn up. Things would be relatively straightforward from here on. She spoke before I had time to sit down. "I'm not staying. I just wanted to say thank you for the roses. It was really sweet and very clever, and I love your accent. But the thing at the party was a mistake. I've never done anything like that before. I'm married. To Richard. We've separated, but I'm not ready for anything new. I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong idea." Speech over, she began to stand. Her glass was still half full, and I was suddenly empty, drained. Deep breath. Smile. "No problem. You didn't give me the wrong idea. But finish your drink. It's fine." "Thanks. I was feeling terrible. I mean, I love your accent." "A bloody accent again. What about the piano? The sparkling wit and the athletic but considerate sexual performance?" She sat down. She was wearing wedding and engagement rings. She saw me looking. "I should have told you at the party. I just assume everyone... I went there straight from work and I don't wear my rings when I'm filming. And I'm not ready to take them off yet, which I guess must tell you something." "You must have got married young," I said. "I was 22. I'm 23 now. A short attention span, or a bad decision." She read my mind. "I don't want to jump from one relationship to another, and I'm not even sure if this is over. So I am definitely, absolutely not available. But you like my accent." "I love your accent. But not enough to be me regular bonker." She laughed and drained her glass. "I don't want to be anyone's regular anything at the moment. I need to get my head straight." She got up again. I was about to move towards her to give her a kiss goodbye while trying to think of how to buy some time when I realized she was considering something. "Can I ask you a question?" she said. I gave what I hoped was a reassuring and encouraging nod. "You promise you'll answer honestly?" "Any reason I wouldn't?" "Yes, that's why I need you to promise, and that you won't tell anyone I asked." "Spit it out, lass." She half turned away, then swiveled back. "Was I okay? I mean, I knew what she meant. And if I were to answer honestly, I would have had to say, how the hell can I tell in 60 seconds?